What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of B is for Build. I'm Chris, and in this episode, I fixed the car. It might be pretty obvious, guys, I'm still a little bit sick. Actually, I'm still a lot of it sick. I've been on the recovery, though. I'm doing better. I just am too anxious to figure out if this is going to solve the problem or not. The adjustable fuel pressure regulator did come in the mail today, and it's one of those things where like my body wants to be home right now, but my brain wants to be here in the shop, and I'm too anxious to figure out if this is going to be the solution. So I'm just going to work through it, but I'm going to take it a little bit slow. You might see a lot of jump cuts because I can't think very clearly, I can't speak very well, and I keep sneezing and coughing in the middle of takes. So I might have to, cut some of these clips up to make one full sentence. Before I get started, I want to take a second out to thank our sponsor. This episode is proudly sponsored by DraftKings. Football season is finally back, and that means it's time for fantasy football, and that means it's time for DraftKings. Chelsea and I have been playing fantasy football for the last few years together, actually, and I've never been a massive football fan, but I do like playing fantasy because I think it's fun to add a little bit of competition into our relationship, and it's fun to play with your friends and different things like that. And it can make other games that are maybe not as interesting a lot more interesting. So if you haven't played it, fantasy before, I definitely recommend it. And I recommend getting started by using DraftKings. There's a link in the description. DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 one-week fantasy football contest this Sunday, and it's totally free to enter. So you got nothing to lose if you want to try it out. It is a one-week fantasy league. You pick your lineup, and then you play against other people. You can start leagues, you can do different things, or you can play against your friends. If you draft the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion, which is insane that they're doing this, but basically if you pick the perfect lineup, you'll win $1 billion for free. Pretty fun. I do get a little bit tired of the traditional format of fantasy where you pick and you kind of tend to get stuck, and then your players get injured, and then it's like, how am I going to get rid of this player? And nobody will trade with you, and all the good players are taken on the league, and it's kind of like, I took 3 L's and now I'm never going to win the league, so I might as well not play anymore. That can be quite boring. I think I described that so well because that was the last 2 years for me in fantasy. It's really, really annoying. But with DraftKings, you redraft every week. So it's pretty fun. It kind of gives it a fresh new aspect on it. So you scope out the players, you watch players that you want to draft, and then you can pick them up. And like I said, you can format your own leagues and different things like that. So it's pretty cool. Chelsea and I will be on there playing. Hit me up in the comments and I'll let you know our usernames, and maybe we can figure out a way to try and beat the crap out of some of you guys, or maybe not. But anyways, like I said, link is in the description. DraftKings, it is a game inside the game. All right, that's it. I will see you guys on DraftKings. Thanks so much to them for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get down to some work. All right, fuel pressure regulator witchcraft. What is it? What does it do? Well, here's what it does. The fuel comes in the fuel rail. That's kind of right down here. You can see the injectors kind of coming off of it. No, you can't. That's impossible to see. What am I talking about? You can see a injector. That's what I was talking about, son. All right, so anyways, fuel comes in the fuel rail right here. This is at the back of it, and it essentially it uses a vacuum pressure to measure the amount of pounds of pressure of fuel it wants to let through there. So at the back, it's restricting, or the opposite of restricting, to let fuel, either more fuel be in the rail, stuck in the rail, make more fuel pressure, or relieve some of that pressure and return down the system. So then you have the return line. This essentially snakes underneath here, and then you get the return line that comes out right here. That's the fuel return line that runs in the system and back into the fuel tank down there. So that's what we need to do. The reason I think that this may be the problem is I think essentially that our fuel pump is too big. It's pumping too much fuel. Our return line has a very, very small return at the very back inside the fuel tank, and I think that this OEM fuel pressure regulator is being essentially overloaded, so there's too much back pressure, and it can't relieve enough pressure out of this line, because it's not adjustable. So anyways, and the vacuum, what the vacuum does is it connects to the manifold, and it judges manifold pressure, and it uses that to do, I'm going to describe this in a pretty poor way, but for anybody that's really trying to learn this stuff, it kind of counteracts whatever's in the manifold pressure, and it's going to say, so it's going to kind of pull up on this diaphragm in here to say that if there is pressure in the manifold, we want to kind of relieve a little bit of pressure from the diaphragm to add, or add more pressure, so we add more pressure in the fuel line. That's kind of a bad way of going about saying it, but really what it's doing is it's saying, okay, if there's 5 pounds of pressure, like you have 5 pounds of boost, we want to add 5 more pounds of fuel pressure, because you're always supposed to be 40 pounds of boost over manifold fuel over manifold. That way you're still squirting 40 pounds of pressure into the cylinders. I hope I explained that well, but essentially it's a measurement tool measuring the manifold pressure so it can adjust, and you always just want to be 40 pounds of fuel pressure higher than manifold pressure. And 40 pounds is also a rough number. I have the exact numbers for Toyota, what they recommend for this engine, written down, and that's what we'll calibrate to once we get it plugged in. So you can see that, you know, you have your hose here. Fuel actually physically comes out from underneath here and then runs down. So now let me grab my adjustable fuel pressure regulator and I'll show you the game plan for hooking that up. Actually, no, I won't. I'm just going to uninstall this thing real quick and then I'll show you guys what we're doing. Alright, so during the teardown I went ahead and took the electronic throttle assembly off of this intake manifold because it gave me a lot more access to this little spot down here. So I gotta clean this up just a tiny bit more. I just cleaned the throttle body. I cleaned all this stuff out and in here. And anyway, so then once I had that off, I decided to clean it. Now we're moving on. So what we do is we take this little guy right here. It's got a threaded side right there, and then this side is just like the OEM fuel pressure regulator, and we screw that down onto here, and then from there we can connect our AN line, which is going to run kind of around and back to our fuel pressure regulator that we're going to mount up here. So this is our high pressure line, so we're going to use the steel braided line as it runs to the fuel pressure regulator. So I'm going to get all that set up and probably button this guy back up and throw it back in there, and then we will work on mounting the fuel pressure regulator and running the rest of the hoses. The fuel feed line is now installed, so you can see that's where we put that little that new threaded thing on there, the adapter plate, and it goes off into some AN fittings into that braided hose, which then runs into the rat's nest of extra ECU wires and whatnot, and comes out right about here. So that's where we're going to feed fuel into our fuel pressure regulator. Let me grab that. That is right here, and so what we got to do next is mount it in a good spot. I'd like it to go right about here. So this one has inlets on both sides in case you have two fuel inlets, which we don't, so we're going to go ahead and block the right side of it. This goes to manifold pressure, and this goes to the fuel feed line. Down here, that's the fuel return line. So one of these, so these hoses are like much too large now, so we're gonna before this is over, we're gonna stop this whole S-ing effect here. We're gonna trim these down. So this is the fuel return line right there. I'll go ahead and unplug that shortly, and that will get fed into the bottom of here, so it's actually in pretty good placement. And I'd like to build a bracket to land this right around here. So that's my plan right now. I'm gonna move these fuel lines out of the way temporarily and then work on building a bracket. I'm not quite sure. I think these bolts hold this whole thing together, so I'm not sure if I want to use one of these bolts to come off of, or if I should just use this one, which is clearly meant to mount a bracket off of. I feel like if I went from, by the way, I did replace the fuel line. This is the fuel filter. This is the right type of inline fuel filter. Anyways, I feel like if I came off of here, I could land right around here pretty well, and that would be nice. Maybe right about there. So that's the game plan right now. I got to build a bracket, and I'm out of argon, so I can't use the TIG welder today. Okay, mounting bracket is complete. So it basically bolts in here, and then behind there it bolts in. It's not 100% up and down, but I don't think that would be a problem. I can't imagine that it really would be, but if it needs to be, I guess I could bend it. But it's nice and sturdy in there. So the next thing I got to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and unbolt it. The nice thing is it kind of does come on and off easy. I got to plug this side. I got to thread the stuff for the drain, and that'll actually have like a hose connector on there, and then I got to get this side threaded to be able to accept the feed line right here. There we have it, a fully installed adjustable fuel pressure regulator. Feed line, drain line, vacuum line. So now we need to calibrate it. left the instructions at home. I think I found the problem. As you can see here, we have 92 pounds of fuel pressure, and I went ahead and loosened this thing up to the point where this thing just kind of came all the way out. So that's no longer adjustable really, and I'm assuming if I go back down, it's not going to change anything either. I had it all the way down as well, so I'll try the 2 mins and maxes of this, but I think what it is our fuel pump return line has a bottleneck in it, and that's not allowing the fuel to return into the tank fast enough, and it's building up way too much pressure in the lines. And that would make sense that if we had over double the fuel pressure that we're supposed to have, that we'd get a little bit more injector squirt, I feel like. So I feel like we're getting close to an answer maybe? I don't know. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna crank this thing all the way down, turn the car off for a second, and then turn it back on and see what it does. Okay, power off. Fuel pressure is falling, and I don't know if this is going to have anything to do with it, but I figured I'd let the fuel pressure completely go down and then turn it back on and see what happens. And we're all the way back up. Make sure it's consistent. Yep, consistently screwed up. All right, well, we found the problem. Somebody else mentioned that to find this problem, I could have just put a fuel pressure gauge on the line, and that is true. I can't argue with that. For some reason in my mind, I just wanted to buy this thing and give this a try as well. Probably thinking that if it was within a variance level that this thing could adjust for, that I would just 2 birds, 1 stone. Anywho, so the problem is not with the adjustable fuel pressure regulator, in case anybody's thinking that's what I'm saying. It's not. I don't have the paperwork for it, so I don't know if max open is lowering the fuel pressure or max close is raising the fuel pressure or whatever, although I said the same thing twice. Anywho, it's not a problem with that. They can probably only adjust within a certain range. If you push, like we're pushing the 95 pounds of fuel pressure or 90 pounds of fuel pressure at it, it probably can't adjust that very much. Would be my guess. I think, anyways, I'm pretty positive what the problem is that we have too much back pressure caused by something in the fuel pump basket assembly. So when the line runs back into the fuel pump area, sorry, it returns back into the fuel pump, it goes in and it returns and it goes into the Venturi system. And that system was built for a 180 liter per hour fuel pump. We put a 450 liter per hour fuel pump in there, and I think it's too small of an opening, and it's creating way too much back pressure, and which is then just pressurizing the whole system really, really hardcore. And if you can't relieve any of that back pressure, this fuel pressure regulator can't really do anything, because it can say maximum open, get all this fuel out of the fuel rail as fast as possible, so we're lowering the pressure in the fuel rail. But if it has nowhere to go, if it can't get back into that fuel tank easily enough, then you're busto. So like I said earlier, I'm not feeling great, so this is where I'm going to kind of stop today, and I'm going to go home, do a little bit more reading, a little bit more research on these different things, and then tomorrow I'm going to come back. Tomorrow I was going to work on oil lines and improving some of those things, because you guys are right, we have some dangerous oil line situation. I was going to do that, but it looks like this whole thing is going to be all about the fuel pressure. But I am very happy that we figured out a problem relating to the fuel, which I had thought very strongly was a problem. So the next step is just fixing it, and I'm confident we'll figure it out. I'm praying that I don't have to order another part in, because that could take forever. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, what's up, guys? I'm back for another day. I feel a lot better than I felt yesterday, so this is a good sign. Let's go ahead and jump in the back of the car and pull the fuel pump and fuel pump assembly basket, all that stuff out of there. All right, I got the fuel pump out, no problem. This is my new workbench for the time being, because the other one is totally full of parts and dirty and everything like that. So it's unfortunate. We're remodeling the shop. We're in the process of kind of changing things around to be a little bit more organized. So right now it's total chaos, and I'm trying to finish a build. And anytime you try and do that, total chaos. So here's the fuel pump. This is the feed line. Fuel feed line was working fine. Obviously we got a ton of fuel pressure. Everything was happy there. No problems there. I've inspected all the lines for the fuel feed. Everything's super happy. Fuel pump's in the same spot where I left it. kind of jankily sitting in there. Now the fuel return line is obviously where we're having problems. So you have the fuel return line comes in right here, runs into this hose right here, wraps around and goes into the Venturi system, and that is where I believe that we have problems. So the Venturi system is meant to do two different things. It pulls right here, it pulls suction on that. So as fuel flies past this Venturi system, it'll create a vacuum, and it pulls suction here, which will actually pull the fuel from the other side of the fuel tanks. Fuel tanks go over the axle, and then it creates a hump, so you have a drain line that runs to the other side. This pulls in fuel from the other side of the fuel tank. This piece comes down here, and this fills up the bucket, so you're constantly keeping the bucket full of fuel. So it uses a suction. Where does it fill up the bucket from? Maybe, does it fill it up from the other side? That's an interesting mystery. So I have some research to do on this, but I found one issue right here. So you have the return fuel line. It's supposed to be returning a ton of fuel right here. It goes into the Venturi system right here. There's some guts of it here. There's also a secondary hose that runs off right here that goes into the bottom of the fuel basket. And I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this or not, but the hole in the inside of that is a tiny little pinhole. So it's definitely not allowing enough fuel. So I got two options. One is I remove the whole Venturi system. I put the return line into the basket, so the fuel returning back into the system will always go into the basket, keeping the basket full of fuel. And then I would have nothing to suck from the other side of the tank, which means that I have to fill up my tank every time I get to about 1/3 of a tank or less. I'd be in trouble, so I'd have to keep a good eye on the gas gauge and always refill my tank early. Also, I think I mentioned that the gas gauge was not working is because this was plugged into here, and as this comes up, it gets stuck on the thing until you hit a big bump, and then it goes clunk, and then it adjusts and goes clunk. So anyways, that's obviously, this line is got to go today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fully disable or disassemble this thing and take more looks at this Venturi system and try and decode kind of how it works and what it does and find where the limiting parts of it are. That way I don't have any more of these pinhole restrictions. My first shot is probably going to be to try and widen up all of these pathways. That way we can have enough return fuel and not peak our fuel pressure. I've got a first modification finished. Let me show you what it is, and this is what I want to test first. That way we don't lose a bunch of other good functionality. Let me start by saying I texted my buddy Kyle, who is running the same type of setup, but he's running a dual fuel pump setup, and he uses this Venturi system, but he bypassed this piece right here, and he has no problems running twice. He has two of these sometimes, and he doesn't have this problem. So I feel like it was in this pinhole right here. I also learned something else. So let me first show you guys that where that was a pinhole, I completely opened that up a bunch. Now I'm gonna go ahead and snap that in here. And what I was, when I was looking at the bottom of this, I was like, why? How does it get fuel from the bottom? So that's how it gets fuel from the left, but how does it get fuel from the bottom? It's pretty interesting. This is actually open. So you see where I clipped that thing in there? That's actually open to the bottom of the fuel tank. So that's how it gets in fuel. It essentially just shoots fuel out of that little hole at such high pressure that when it goes past the bottom of that, it picks up some fuel from the bottom and fills up the basket. So with this working right here, we should have the Venturi, if this works, we should have the Venturi sucking in from the other fuel tank, we should have the basket filling up, and then this, I believe, got pressed out because we had the fuel system at like 100 PSI, so it got popped out. So I did two things. I bent this bar a little bit, so even if it does pop back out again, the bar won't hit it anymore. But I'm also going to snap it back in here, and hopefully with a lot less fuel pressure on the system, because the hole's so much bigger, this thing won't pop out again. Maybe I won't try and do this one-handed. Anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and reinstall it, and then we'll pressurize the fuel system and see how we do. With the fuel system temporarily reinstalled, I just kind of set the whole basket in there. I think this is going to be the fun place to watch. I'm going to go ahead and turn the car on, which will turn the fuel pump on, and then we'll see if it's at an adjustable fuel pressure or if it's still absolutely insane. We're 5 pounds less than before. Let's see if it's at all adjustable. 43 pounds. That's exactly where we need to be. Right on. Okay. I'm going to tighten down everything, button everything up, and then let's do some test runs. Things are going to get loud here soon, so excuse me for that. But here's the Toyota. This is for this engine specs on fuel pressure. Again, we're still at the stock injectors and the stock fuel rail and everything like that. So this is exactly out of the factory. Idling with the vacuum connected, that's this hose right here. We want to be between 24 and 31 PSI. Idling without vacuum, meaning I'm gonna have to pull this hose off 33 to 40. So I'm gonna grab a pair of needle nose pliers so I can be ready to pull the vacuum off. I'm gonna go ahead and open the garage door, kick the engine on. We'll make sure that we're dialed in for idle with vacuum first, and then I'll pull it off and we'll check without. Before we check the gauge, we are gonna have to start it, so it'd be interesting to see the cold start fuel air fuel ratio. Now remember that when the engine does cold start like this, it is gonna run richer than normal, but it probably shouldn't be a 10. So this will be the first sign, I think, if we've made a correction here, is if this thing doesn't run at a flat 10. That's a lot more like it. I don't know if you guys can see. That's a very good sign right there. We need to adjust down. Okay, so a little bit of bad news there. When the engine goes into idle, when we turn the engine on and it idles, the fuel pressure actually goes up. I thought it would go down. So with the fuel pressure up that high, we were actually at 50, and there's no more adjustability in the fuel pressure regulator, meaning that there is too much back pressure in the system. Meaning it's back to square one. I gotta jump back in there, completely uninstall the fuel pump and basket and everything like that, pull it out and keep tweaking on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump back in there, pull it out, and we'll make some more modifications and see where we land. All right, back to a familiar site, except this time I took apart the Venturi system. This is the piece that draws in fuel from the secondary tank. And so basically, we had a line here and a line here, and they both ended up with little pinholes in the bottom. And you could see the pinhole here. Well, you can't, but trust me, at the bottom of that, there's a pinhole. This one was completely clogged, 100% clogged. So I unclogged it, but I'm also gonna go ahead and, there you go, you can see it. I'm also gonna go ahead and drill this out. So remember, we weren't dealing with a return style fuel system before either. So now we're returning so much more fuel into this thing than before. So we really gotta widen out these openings if I wanna have a chance to make this work. But I'm pretty confident that we went from basically this being completely plugged and doing nothing, and that taking all the load, to this being open and that being open. I think we'll be able to get back into the range. So I'm gonna drill it out, reinstall it, and then I'm gonna temporarily install it back in the car. I'm not gonna make the mistake of fully installing it again until we prove out the theory. Round two, let's see how this thing goes. First, I'm just gonna go ahead and pressurize the fuel system, and we'll see what that does and how it responds. There we go, we're all the way down to 20. So now we can repressurize things. All right, I'm ready to start it up. All right, that's idle with vacuum set. Idle without vacuum looks correct too, so we're good. All right, well, with that all set up, I want to try and take the car out for a spin. To do that, we're gonna have to go ahead and connect the mid pipe and the rest of the exhaust to the down pipe at the very least. And obviously I know that oil lines are gonna be an issue, but we'll just take it easy for this little drive. I really just wanna get it out on the streets and make sure that we're fixing the problem, get into boost, make sure we're not running rich anymore, and that type of stuff. I mean, I'm pretty confident that this was obviously the problem. If not, it was a huge problem. But you know, I just want to verify it, and I think I have the time if I move quickly. So anyways, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna jump under the car, connect the exhaust, and then try and get it out of here. All right, car is ready to roll. I'm ready to roll. It's getting a little dark outside. I'm not too concerned about that. So I'm gonna pull this thing out of here and we'll take it out for a spin and see how we do on the streets. Oh, I gotta mention that this has gotta be a real dainty test drive because I don't have two of these V-band clamps at the right size. I got one that was too big. So the one down there is actually too big, which makes it a little bit of a loose fitting connecting the down pipe to the mid pipe. If the mid pipe comes undone, it will punch itself into the ground and rip the exhaust out the back, and I probably wouldn't drive over it, but it'll probably just shoot right out the back, which would be hilarious but dangerous. So we're gonna do this gently on very non-populated streets. All right, so we're out here and we're idling okay, but when I get on it, it actually seems like it's running a little bit lean. I think. Here, I'll show you a little bit. So see how it gets to 16, 15. Now I'm on the throttle here. It shouldn't be at a 14, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull over and check the fuel pressure and see if that's still where it wants it to be. I wasn't on the throttle very much. I definitely wasn't full throttle, but it's got me a little bit worried. It's at 31, which is where it's supposed to be, so... Alright, well this is actually a really nice parking lot to drive around in to try and figure stuff out, so I'm just gonna stay off the streets for a second. Running lean is a lot more dangerous than running rich in these type of test scenarios, so that's what I'm really worried about. Yeah, it's not going down. It should be at like a 12 or a high 11 if I really floor it, and it's really not going down. Yeah, okay, that's enough of that. I'm gonna give you guys one more shot as I just drive through this intersection. You let me know what you think. I'm gonna get on it a little bit more right here. That was about 20% throttle, maybe a touch more. I don't know. Here, I'll get on it a little bit more. So it's like 13.8 and then it climbs up. Very strange. All right, made it safely back to the shop. That was a pretty illegal drive. I forgot to plug that headlight in, so we're driving around with one headlight. Anywho, two things I'd like feedback on. People that have widebands in their car, did that look right? Or did that look dangerous like I thought it was? It looked a little dangerous to me, so I don't want to be wrong on that. So somebody let me know in the comments below, please. Then the second thing is, let's talk about these oil and water lines in the turbo system. So this line right here is not hot at all. It's just the oil temperature, because it's running between those, and what I could do is I could put a fastener here so it stays running between those, so they don't actually touch the pipes at all. This water line's got to get moved because it's like on a pipe. Sorry, it's focusing on the one. That one right there. So that'll go up and back over, and I understand that we don't want to loop them, so I'll work on that. I might have them both go out and then use all rubber lines to get back. Now the hard one is the drain line, which you probably can't see. It's way down there. And it has to go straight down, and the only way that it can go straight down is straight into there. But it makes contact like midway through the line, so some people are saying, well, it's going to melt through the rubber on the inside of that line, and then it's going to explode. I don't know. I'm not sure if I have to hardline it. Somebody said another YouTube channel has been getting away with this for a while. I'm just wondering, like, these lines are definitely rated to be on a turbo, and like if you're this close to the turbo anyways, if you're bolting in right in the middle there, like, how little heat can these things take? So I know it's hard to see that drain line, but the question is do I have to? I mean, it needs to go straight down. So the only other thing I could do is I could take the whole turbo system off and try and somehow put a hard line in there. But man, that's going to be really, really tricky to fish down there. But let me know. Let me know what I can and can't get away with. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I just realized that we fixed it. So I am very happy. I guess I didn't just realize it, but it's kind of come to me that, like, this is fixed. That fuel pressure, or the fuel pressure problem was causing the running rich problem. Now we're not running rich. Am I running too lean? You guys will let me know. But I mean, I think I am. But then I also realized another thing is that the numbers that I found as far as how much fuel pressure to run on this engine were for, it just said generically a 2JZ GTE. That could have been the US spec 2JZ GTE, which has different injectors running at a different impedance than mine. So the Japanese version, the Aristo, commonly called the Aristo version that I have, may need a different fuel pressure number. So let me know if any of you guys own one of these, what the stock fuel pressure number is, or whatever. I'll figure it out, and we'll get it on there. And we know that is a dial I can just turn, and I'll get more fuel pressure or I'll get more fuel in the system if I need to. So anyways, I want to do it the right way though, so please let me know the right number, and that's awesome. So I'm super stoked on this. That is a big improvement, and now we no longer have that problem. And the next steps are getting it ready to be going down to California. So things like the front impact bar, mounting the radiator, buttoning up some of that stuff, figuring out the oil lines and the cooling lines. you know, small modifications on that stuff, and tidying up a little bit of stuff, maybe even a little bit more wiring, but we got it. I mean, we got it, and I'm stoked on it. We can stop talking about a standalone ECU. Please, pretty please, let's just stop talking about it. The other thing is I may not go ahead and do the SAFC and the new injectors before I go down to California. It just kind of depends on my mood. I'm very, very anxious to get down there. I'm behind schedule, and I honestly want to move on to some of the other builds that we have lined up before we run out of time in summer. So yeah, I may just kind of cut it short, and we'll have a 400 horsepower version, which is fine by me. What else? Last few things I want to say is this show is supported by you guys, the viewers, so thank you so much for watching this episode. Thanks so much to our sponsor of this episode, which is DraftKings. Again, the link is in the description. Check it out. $100,000 in prizes ain't bad for free. That's a good free roll. I'm gonna be doing it. It's gonna be fun this weekend. And the last way that you guys can support, if you're Uber supporters, is by buying our merch, which is located at bsforbuild.com. If you scroll down, you'll find the shop, and that's where we sell all of our merch. We're selling out of these babies, and a couple other shirts are gonna go until they are gone, because we're bringing in new stuff for the fall. So if there's any models that you wanted to get your hands on, grab them now before they're gone. I found some misprinted ones, and that's why I've been wearing these and killing these in the shop. And you'll probably see that over the next week. I found 4 of these that had misprints that I couldn't sell, so work close. So anyways, that is how we stay alive. That's how we keep the lights on, and we actually keep the lease for the shop and other stuff like that. So thank you guys so much that support through those various channels. Other than that, we're on all the social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, all that good stuff. We're BS for Build on there, and we're also BS for Build on Twitch. Thank you guys so much that have came by and watched us as we've been streaming. Myself and some other YouTubers have been streaming. I normally give a little bit of behind the scenes on what's going on with the car, and it's been a good thing, and I'm going to continue doing it. And actually, in the next episode, I'm going to do a real quick one. It would normally be a day off for me, but instead I'm going to build a gaming PC for a specific game that I've been playing. Anyways, and show you guys kind of the ins and outs of that. I mean, I assume a lot of you guys know, but for those of you that don't, it'll be a good little behind the scenes. I'll get into my streaming gear and that other kind of stuff around that too, which might be even more interesting for you guys. In my studio, which none of you have seen, and I'm rambling. All right, thank you guys so much for all the support. Like I said, this has been awesome. I'm stoked on this. I'm glad I get to make the title. We fixed the car. That's going to be great. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys soon, and we're going to get this thing wrapped up. Peace! Come on!